Greetings. This video is the first of a four-part series on configuring a basic routing and switch network. There will be four videos, the first of which will cover configuring basic devices, including the routers in the network. The second one will be going over switch connectivity and VLANs. The third will be covering OSPF, the routing protocol. And then the fourth will be configuring some basic settings of DHCP, NAT, and access control lists. Let's go ahead and take a look at this simulator that I'm using. What we're looking at is the basic network that we're going to attempt to configure. Basically, it's a computer being simulated out on the internet, connected to an internal LAN with three routers. One of the routers has connected to it two switches, which have been configured with a trunk, and two PCs. We're now going to go ahead and configure this with all the appropriate information. Everything you're looking at here has no configurations, they're all blank. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with this basic diagram, and then we're going to build each configuration. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to configure the basic settings on the Internet PC. So up here I'm going to go ahead and click on the Internet PC, and I'm just going to go to the Desktop tab and click on IP configuration, and I'm going to configure the basic settings. Now, what I need to do is configure the PC according to the instructions on the diagram. In this case, you'll notice that the IP address is 209.165.200.230. The subnet mask, since it's a /29, you need to convert that to the appropriate mask. In this case, it's 248. You'll then put the default gateway in, which is 209.165.200.225. That's going to be the address of this particular router. Now, this isn't the way it would normally work on the internet, but we're going to simulate what an outside machine would be able to do when connecting into this route and switch network. Okay, I've now configured the basic IP settings for the Internet PC. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to close the Internet PC. We're now ready to work on each of our router configurations. The most important router that we're going to deal with during this build out is going to be router 1. The reason why is router 1 is going to be connected into the switch network, so it'll require a more advanced configuration. Let's go ahead and open up router 1. And there we go. So there's a couple of things that we need to know how to do. First off, we boot the router up. We're going to go to the command line interface of this router, which I just did. And we've just booted this router up with no configuration. So I'm going to hit Control-C to break out of that. Then I'm going to hit Return. Now I'm in a router prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly go to Enable mode. So I'm going to type Enable. That's going to get me to a #. I'm now ready to configure my basic settings. To do so, I'm going to go to Config T for Configure Terminal. And now I'm in the config terminal mode. I'm now ready to implement my commands. The first command you need to do is to disable DNS lookup, because it's really annoying if you type the incorrect command in. You have to wait for a long period of time while the router tries to find the host name. So we're going to type no IP domain lookup. There, now we won't be penalized for typos. Okay, we're now ready to set our host name. To do so, we're going to type hostname R1. So because I want it to be hostname router 1, so R1. Now the # command has changed, so we know that it is correct. We're now ready to set our encrypted privilege mode password. The encrypted privilege mode password uses the keyword secret. So we're going to type enable secret, and then we're going to simply type the password of class. And that is going to set the enable password to be secret, or the encrypted privilege mode password. We're now going to set our console port password. So to do so, we're going to type line con 0, and I'm going to type the command password, and I'm going to type the password. We'll just do Cisco, and then I'm going to type the command login, which will allow it to log on. We're now ready to do, we're going to set the same password on our telnet interfaces. So I'm going to go line VTY04, and I'm going to type password Cisco, and I'm going to type login. There you go. I now have a password on both my console ports and on my telnet ports. Okay. We're now ready to encrypt all passwords. So that password that I just put in for my console and my telnet password, I'd like to be encrypted. So I'm going to exit down to the config mode, and I'm going to type service and oops. So what we're going to do is you want to type service password encryption. So what I want to do, though, before I show you how to do that, you want to do space. If you forget kind of what the command is, because this is one of the commands that are hard to remember exactly, so you'll type service question mark, and you can see all of the ones that are there. If you hit P and then tab, it'll fill the whole command in for you. So that's just a little shortcut to make it go faster for you when you're actually configuring these things. So service password encryption is what we want to do. This will encrypt all commands in running config. To show you that, I will exit, oops, and then I will type show run, and you'll now notice that my my password, my console password, and my telnet passwords have been encrypted. I'm going to go to config T. I'm going back into configuration mode, and we're now going to configure a banner. A banner lets people know that they're not to access this router, that their unauthorized access is not allowed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We're going to do that with the banner command, banner MOTD, and then we're going to put some special character in. This case, I'll use the @ sign, and I'm going to do unauthorized access is prohibited. There we go. Now when I'm done, I will go ahead and do an @ sign again, and we're back at it. So that's basically how I configure a banner. And you can test that banner by basically exiting out and logging in again, and you'll see the banner. Or you can simply do show run, and you can see the banner again. We're now ready to configure our serial interfaces. So let's go and look at the diagram behind us. We're going to configure this interface right here, serial 000. So we're going to go ahead and go back to that, and we're going to type interface serial 0/0/0. Okay, we're now configuring this interface. Now, if you looked at the diagram carefully, this interface has been configured, been plugged in with a DCE serial cable. So consequently, I need to configure this with a clock rate. So the first thing, though, I want to do is I want to give this serial interface a description. So to do so, you type description connection to R2, because this is going to be connecting to the R2 router. I'm going to hit enter. I'm now ready to give it an IP address. IP address, you got to type it correctly. IP address. Now here, I'm going to go back here. I'm in the 172.16.12.0 network. So, and it's on a /30, which is going to give me a couple of IPs to use. I'm going to go ahead and use the lowest IP on this interface and the highest IP on this interface. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to do IP address 172.16.12.1, and in this case I need to do a /30 subnet mask, which is 255.255.255.252. Okay. And now I'm going to type clock rate, and I need to give it a clock rate. Let's go ahead and give it 128,000. There we go. Very good. And now we are going to set this with, we're going to tell this interface that we don't want it to be shut down anymore. So we're going to type no shut, which will put the interface in a no shut interface. Now, it's not going to come up right now, and the reason is because I don't have the other serial side on router 2 connected and working. But nonetheless, the interface is now configured, which is a great thing. So I'm going to type exit, and I'll get out of that interface. And now the last thing that we want to do on router 1 is we want to configure the default route. So default routes are configured with the IP route command. and you do 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0. Now, two things you can do. One thing is you can set the IP route to be a specific IP of another device, maybe router 2's interface, or you can tell it to go out its serial interface. So you can say, I want my default route to go out that serial interface, and then I can hit enter. And that sets a default route to get out, to always out that interface. So there you go. That's how you configure it. Now, one more step, we would need to then configure G0/1. Which is router 1's gigabit interface connected to the switch. We're not going to do that yet because that gets into our VLAN creation, and we'll reserve that for our second video. We're now done with this router, so I'm going to hit exit to get out of config mode, and I'm going to type copy, run, start to save the configuration. Okay, I'm now completed with router 1's basic setup. So now let's go ahead and move to router 2's basic setup. So I'm going to go up here and click on router 2, and I'm going to open up the command line. And once again, we're at the basic setup of the command line. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-C in here to break out of the initial system configuration and hit return. And same drill as I did in the past, I'm going to go ahead and configure the basic settings. So I'm going to first type enable to get into this mode. Then I'm going to go config T to start configuring the device, to configure my running configuration. And now I'm going to type no IP domain lookup. That's the first command I want to do. Second command is I want to give it a host name. Third command is I want to set the enable secret mode password. So I'm going to type enable secret, and I'm going to type class. Very good. Now I'm going to give myself a console password, line con 0. And I'm going to type password, and I'm going to type the password Cisco, and we'll do the command login. Now I'm ready to do line VTY04 for my telnet password, and I'll put my telnet password in, and I will also issue the login command on there. There we go. Now I'm going to exit out of line config mode, and now I'm going to set service, and you remember the little trick you can do question mark here, and you can see all the commands. So I hit P and then tab, and service password encryption fills in, and I'm going to hit enter. So now I've encrypted all my passwords. Another thing that we're going to do during this exercise, I'm going to show you a couple of other features that we want to be able to implement. One of them is by emulating a web server with this router. And so we're going to do so. We're going to enable the HTTP service daemon on this router. So that's one command I want you to know how to do. So we're going to type IP HTTP server. And this will enable, actually I did that wrong. Uh-oh. So it doesn't look like on this particular router I have a HTTP server on here. That's okay. That just means I have a router that has an iOS that doesn't have that feature. So that's okay. Don't worry, we will not do that on this particular router. That's okay. So ignore that command. So we're ready to go on to the banner command. So we're going to type banner, MOTD, and we'll put our special character in. And now we're going to type unauthorized. Unauthorized access is prohibited. And I'm going to end that with the character there. Awesome, we did it. So now we're ready to configure our interfaces. So let's look at these interfaces. So we have a serial 000, 001, and a G00. So we have three interfaces to configure. Also, notice there's a special interface on the diagram. We also have a loopback interface to configure. The reason why we're using loopbacks we'll talk about later, but it has to do with our OSPF routing configuration that we're going to do. So let's go ahead and configure all of these interfaces. So we have a total of 4 of them to configure. All right, we're going to go ahead and configure our interfaces. The first interface that we're going to configure is interface serial 0/0/0. I just went into that interface. Let's show you how to do that again. I'm going to go to interface S0/0/0 and hit enter. I'm now in that interface. First thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a description. So I'm going to type description connection to R1, because this one's going to be connected to R1. And if you remember from the previous configuration on router 2, or I mean on router 1, notice I'm 172.16.12.0/30. So I want this to be the I think we configured the first available IP. I want this to be the second available IP. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to type IP address 172.16.12.2, and I need to put my /30 subnet mask in. There we go. That types it in. Now, I do not need to do clock rate on here because this is not a DCE interface. So I'm going to type no shut. Now this time it comes up. That's because both interfaces are configured, both on router 1 and on router 2. I'm going to hit enter and I'm back in that mode. So now interface serial 0/0/0 is done. So now I'm going to go ahead and configure interface serial 0/0/1. So interface S0/0/1. I'm going to hit enter. There we go. I'm going to now type in the description. So we'll do description. Connection to R3. The reason? Because this one is connected to the R3 connection. So that's why I'm typing that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do connection to R3 and then hit enter. Now we're ready to type in the IP address. In this case, 23.0. I'll give this one the first IP, so it'll be 23.1. I'll type IP address. Okay. 172.16.23.1. And I need to do a /30 mask. There we go. This one has a DCE interface. The reason I can tell, if you click on here and hover your mouse, you'll see a little clock on there. You see that? It's a DCE interface. So this is a DC interface, so I have to set clock rate. So I'll do clock rate, and I'm going to do 128,000 again. Okay. Clock rate is now set. I'm now going to do a no shutdown. Now it will not go up because router 3 is not configured yet. So there we go. Now I'm ready to configure interface G0/0. So I'm typing interface G0/0, and now I'm in that interface. I'll give it a description. Connection to ISP, let's say. And now I'm going to give it an IP address, and I will give it the first available IP address in that subnet. So it'll be 209.165.200.225. There we go. So that's the IP address. And I need to give it a mask. And I believe that top internet connection was a 248. And then I'm going to type no shutdown on that. And that should come up, and it did. We're now ready to configure the loopback interface. So if you've never done one of these before, this is how you do it. You type interface, and you're going to type LO0 for loopback interface 0. And then we're going to hit enter. And there we go. That brings it up immediately. And we're going to give it a description. Description. Simulated web server. Simulated web server is what we'll call it. And I will give it an IP address. 10.10.10.10. And I will give it a mask. And since it's a direct IP, I'll give it a mask of all ones, and I'll hit enter. There you go. That's how you configure the loopback interface. The reason I want to do this, later I'm going to show you how to configure some routing entries using OSPF, and I want to make sure that we have something to route to. In this case, it'll be the web server. Okay, the last thing we want to do is set the default route to go out the gigabit interface 0/0. So we're going to exit out of interface mode. We're going to type IP route, and we're going to do 0.0.0.0.0.0.0, and we're going to say we want that to go out G0/0. So that sets up my default route that I need for this router. That's pretty much how you configure router 2. So I'm going to type exit, and I'm going to type copy, run, start. There we go. That's pretty much how you configure router 2. I'm now ready to configure router 3. So I'm going to close router 2, and I'm going to click on router 3. Now this particular one, I'm going to configure the serial side of the 172.16.23.0 network, and I'm going to configure 3 loopback interfaces. so we can have some little fun with routing later on. So I'm going to click on the command line interface, and I'll hit return, and it's going to take me, actually I could have hit Control C or either, and that takes me to a router prompt. We're now ready to configure router 3. This one's going to be relatively easy, other than the 3 loopback interfaces. So I'm going to type enable, and now I'm going to type my first command, config T, to get to configuration terminal mode. And now I'm going to type no IP domain lookup. Okay, very good. I'm going to give it my host name, which is R3. I'm now going to set the secret password. So enable secret class. And now I'm going to do the console password, line con 0, password Cisco, log in, and then I'll do the telnet password, which is password Cisco, and the command is login. There you go. That's how you do the telnet. Now I want to encrypt these passwords. I'm going to exit out of line mode and type service, right? And then I'm going to type P and then tab, service password encryption. Now I'm ready to do my banner, MOTD, and I'm going to do the same banner I did the other times. Unauthorized access is prohibited. There we go. And I'll put an @ sign. We've basically said unauthorized access is permitted on that particular interface. So that's great. We're now ready to, now that we're done with the banner, let's do our, we have 4 interfaces to do, a serial interface and 3 loopbacks. First one we'll do is interface serial 0/0/1, and this one does not require a clock rate because it's on a DTE interface, but I do want to give it a description. So I will say connection to R2, and on this case I'm going to do IP address, and I'm going to give it the second IP in that block. So it'll be 172.16, I believe it was 23.2, and I'm going to say 255.255.255.252 because it was a /30. Hit enter, and now I'm ready to do my no shut. Now it should come up, and it does. So it comes up because both R2 and R3 are now up and running. Now I am ready to do my loopbacks. If you get this little line, this console message, this syscon message, just hit enter, and that'll make that go away. So now I'm going to type interface LO4, because I think it wanted 4. Let's make sure. It was LO4. Yeah, LO4, LO5, and LO6. That's what we want. So LO4, interface LO4. It'll immediately bring it up. Hit enter. And now we're going to type IP address 172. What? No, it wasn't 172. It was 192.168.4.1, and we'll give it a /24 subnet mask. Let's do the same thing with interface LO5. That'll bring that up. Let's give it a minute while it does its little thing. There we go. And now I'm going to type IP address 192.168.5.1, and we'll give it our /24 mask. There we go. And now let's do interface LO6. Give it a second there. All right. Now let's go ahead and type IP address 192.168.6.1, and this will also be on a /24. There we go. And that is it on that. We're done. Let's go ahead and exit out of config interface mode. Now we're ready to configure our default route, IP route 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0, and we're going to make it go out serial 0/0/1. There you go. And boom, we're done. So we're now going to exit, and we're going to type copy, run, start to save our configuration. We've now completed router 3's configuration. That's it for part 1 of our video. We basically configured the internet PC, and we configured our 3 routers. Next video, we'll dive into the more complex setups of switch and VLANs. Thank you.